Zoomer's exhibition by Hazelhurst is an outstanding collection of HSC 2021 artworks from students across New South Wales and is the visual voice of Generation Z. These works were nominated for inclusion by their teachers, and it features over 50 works of the best practice in visual arts education, including the work of 9 local students from the Sutherland Shire and St George area. This exhibition incorporates a broad range of works, including ceramics, drawing, graphic design, painting, printmaking, photography, sculpture, and digital art forms.
I wanted it so the audience has to gaze, they had to look through and make their eyes travel throughout the entire photograph. So I would have one set of eyes maybe looking to the side, another set of the eyes looking in a different direction. And I also had to think about if I wanted the central figure to look directly at the camera, but the gaze at a different direction, because that could create more interest and increase the audience engagement with my artwork. My name is Francine Geronimo. I attended Santa Sabina College, and the title of my body of work is Still Live.
And I'm Brian Walker, and I'm a visual arts teacher at Santa Sabina, of course.
In my body of work, I really wanted to explore putting still life in a surreal context. And to achieve this, I did a juxtaposition using traditional Dutch still life motifs and combining that with a display of modern objects. My major work is really stemming from my Year 11 body of work, which was in a much simpler approach where it was just one central figure. I asked for Mr. Walker's help for some ideas, and he just said, try adding in another plane. And I didn't think of adding in several walls, and realizing that I had these walls at my disposal, the possibilities came from there. To add another model, add in some more objects. I had to do some research and look back to 16th century still life paintings and how they relied heavily on the use of religious symbolism. So I would take elements of the fruit or the bread, lace, other traditional symbols like that. And I would also look to pop culture, contemporary artworks, and use motifs from that as well and put them in my images. What surprised me was I didn't realize how difficult it would be to create such complex and intricate scenes. And so when I was sketching in my notebook, I just sketched it. Like, of course I had to think about how I would replicate this in real life, but I wasn't focusing on that as I sketched it. So when I got into the photo studio, I'm like, it's a lot harder to get people to contort themselves in such a manner. It may not seem like it, but there's a lot of physical labor involved in the setups. When I came into the photo studio, I set up all the scenes myself. With the help of Mr. Walker, he helped me get the foam core backgrounds. So all these different planes, I would stand them up with extra tripods and use duct tape to ensure it would be sturdy. And how I achieved the disembodied look of the artwork was also a challenge. I had to work with knives and ensure that the holes were the appropriate size for the limbs to go through.
Absolutely, and just seeing people's faces when they'd come and visit the studio and they'd walk around and see the setup, and the eyes would widen because it was just such an unusual setting and so playful and exaggerated, and just a great excuse for me to bring out all of my toys and go, Francine, we should use this. But yeah, it was just a great process.
Also, photographing in a studio was really new to me. Although I was used to holding a camera, I wasn't used to using the artificial lights and setting up the tripods, and I had to consider so many elements. The main thing was to maintain the communication between the photographer, me, and my models. And it was a comfortable atmosphere because they were all peers from my school.
Yeah, and Fran had a great way of bringing them in and making them feel invested in the work as well, which was fantastic.
It was like a bit of group work there.
That's right, absolutely. And your leadership really made that happen as well. Like your ability to bring everyone together and get them excited and keep them excited for those 2 hours, whatever the shoot took, and while still paying such close attention to the composition.
I often underestimated the time I needed, so I thought I would strictly stick to the prepared sketches I already had, but it turns out the best ideas and the most interesting compositions come out when I'm really already working in the zone. When COVID hit, I only did one of the first photo shoots of my first image. So I was really working with one image during the entirety of COVID. I couldn't go into school and use the photography studio as I intended. So I tried to think smart and use my time wisely. So I used that time at home to really grind down and edit that image until the imperfections could not be seen, and I could contact Mr. Walker via Google Meets, and I could share my screen easily, and he could tell me if there's anything that looks a bit off, out of place, and I could easily put in those edits while he could see it on my screen in real time during the video call.
In terms of the content, thankfully I'm a bit of a hoarder of curios, so a lot of that I had available to go, Francine, can you use these? And she'd go through and go, oh yes, I'd like to use this and that.
During those video calls, he would suggest the items, and I would then sketch it in.
A funny thing for Francine was she wasn't as happy with her drawing skills with her concept sketches. So at the start, she'd go online and Google up every single item she wanted to put in there and try and Photoshop it all together. It's like, Francine, you have to work smart. So yes, I tried to build her confidence in sketches, and by the end she was really just using that skill, and we were getting them down a lot faster and a lot more effective.
I understood that Mr. Walker was there to support our class, and knowing that he was there to provide some guidance and support made me feel a little more at ease, so I wasn't as stressed all the time. So I would take those opportunities to email him any questions I had, or send through late at night last minute ideas I wanted to change before going into the photo shoot, which I'm sure he appreciated my very lengthy emails and the ridiculously long email chains we had.
Francine was one of those students who invariably I'd open my email and there was her name. And it's like, okay, she was wanting feedback, she was wanting to make times to catch up, etc. She was just really resilient in terms of overcoming the challenges, as many students were at that time, but just so consistent, and that was fantastic. And of course, students who show that sort of quality, you just want to support, and you just want to give them everything you can to make sure that they produce what they're capable of.
I think the voice of Generation Z is so integral in society today, because I think we're so in tune with technology and really making use of the resources online we have. We're increasingly becoming more informed with the news and social media, and having that social platform gives opportunities for young people to voice their opinions and share their stories, and really building that awareness allows for not so easy conversations to be said that do have to be talked about.
I guess Generation Z are the voice of now, and so what is now? Now is a challenging situation in many forms, and how do we respond to it? And I guess the thing is, in the past, a lot of younger people didn't have much of a voice. With communication as it is now, they can have a voice, and they can speak about things that are important to them, and they can hopefully direct the future in a way that they'd like it to be seen.
I tried to capture the personalities of the people that I find really important to me. I think some of the images are posed, but I tried to capture the figures, the people, as naturally as I possibly could, and I tried to capture moments that feel really authentic. My name is Brielle Ziegler. I went to Curated High School, and the name of my work is Through the Retrospective Lens.
My name is Kirsten Williamson, and I'm a visual arts teacher at Curated High School.
My work is about capturing my life through my subjective lens. I also captured myself through the lens that I view myself, and I don't think it was like a negative or positive perception, but more just a lens of curiosity. Like, I'm just still getting to know myself and who I am as an artist. I looked at MC Escher's works and I really just liked the sort of illusions he'd created with his works. That's why I chose to work with a fisheye lens to sort of give that slight warped effect. Got a fisheye lens and just sort of started taking photos. At first it was just spare of the moment, taking photos of my friends, and I tried to pick the ones that I thought looked most interesting but also really captured how I perceived those people in those moments. During the lockdowns I didn't have access to my friends as subjects anymore, so I began looking inward more to my family and myself and my pets, and I just sort of captured what I was seeing around me. My mother knitting and I think drinking a cup of tea, my brother holding a basketball. They're all just parts of their personality and what I see in them. It took me a while to build up the technique and build up the confidence with pen, but once I did, I found it really rewarding and I was really proud of the work. And I just really like pen as a way of capturing really fine details and focusing on contrasting light and shadow to make it really dramatic. I later decided to also incorporate scratchboard into my work, and I thought that it created a really interesting look amongst the collection of works, because I had gone from working in the positive parts of an image, trying to capture the darkest shadows with pen, to the complete reverse with the scratchboard and trying to capture the highlights. You can't erase them, you can't go back once you've made a mistake. So it's really scary at first to start a picture because you don't want to mess it up. But I think it forces you to just take things as you go, and if you make a mistake, to just work with it and try to incorporate it into the picture. And I'm a very perfectionist person, so it sort of forced me to accept the work as it was instead of constantly going back and fixing it up and erasing it. I did the self-portraits also with coloured pen, because I think that the colour helps to portray that the lens I see myself through is a very different one. It's perhaps a little bit more detailed, a bit more colourful, because I just know myself much more than I think I'll ever know the people around me. And yeah, I just really like experimenting. The pandemic sort of brought new meaning to my work, because obviously in the lockdowns we only ever got to interact through a camera lens and on the other side of a screen. When I look back on my work, it's sort of now is a representation of that. It reflects that experience of only ever seeing each other through a lens. Working online actually probably forced me and other students to communicate maybe more than we would have. I think that had we been going to school face to face, I wouldn't have valued that communication as much, but once I had lost it, I realised how important it was.
So the way that we would communicate is she would send an image or progress, and then I would actually print it off, write over it, draw on it, do whatever, scan it and send it back. And that's the way that we got around sort of not being in the classroom. But I think what Brielle said is true. I feel like I got to know students on a deeper level that I might have gotten to know them in the classroom, because they, particularly the ones that might have been a bit quieter or more shy, were more willing to have that constant dialogue with you at home. So 2 lockdowns for this cohort. So we've been watching them and seeing, you know, how they've been coping and how resilient they've been and how they've been able to face those challenges. And particularly this group of artists that are going to come out of this generation are going to be so exciting, because as artists have always done, they challenge the conventions of society, challenge by highlighting ideas and issues. And I think this group is going to be so exciting to watch because of that.
I think that with any new generation, young people just bring really new, fresh perspectives and ideas to the world. So it's always important to listen to what they have to say.
I feel like my artwork's very dramatic in the colours and the texture of my artwork. I feel like the whole idea was to make the audience stop and reflect, but also learn about the difference between the past and the present, and also how the past is still inside the present. Hi, my name is Harrison Agnew. I'm from Edmund Rice College, West Wollongong, and my title of my work is Legacy. My model, Balin, is a proud Biripi man. He's an Indigenous Australian, and he's from the Tartha region. So he's not actually from the area that I'm from. We both had leadership positions at the school, and he's been a mate of mine for a long time now, and he's always been proud of his culture. But it came up just in an everyday conversation. He told me about the struggles that he had and the idea of legacy and how colonisation is still affecting his life. It was very emotional at the start. He broke down and told me a lot of important things in his life. The initial stages of figuring out how to represent it in a respectful way of his culture into my artwork was a very challenging thing. There's a lot of rules and a lot of specific things and guides I had to follow. His artwork's definitely a representation of not only himself but also his culture. I had to go see elders and also his people from his background, like his parents and stuff. And a lot of that conversation was surrounding about what's the main idea of this artwork and why I should be able to take not only take photos of him, but create a story around him, I guess. Communicating with his family was a massive thing. It was definitely emotional because I could see how much his family meant to him. And I was definitely nervous because my duty was to not only show his story, but their story. Meeting his family was great. I understood where he came from and his true morals. Definitely creating connections, not only with him, but with others inside his culture. Really, it made it clear what I had to do, but also how I could present my ideas inside the artwork. So it was a lot of hours we spent together, and seeing his face and when he saw the edited photos was humbling because I felt like I almost did my duty to show his story. Yeah, it was a great experience. Mrs. Costello was my main role model, and she's been my art teacher for 4 years now. She helped me through editing, and lighting was especially the main thing she helped with. Trying to capture something and symbolize darkness or hatred through lighting was a massive thing that she showed me. But I think overall she honestly helped our class so much, from Zoom calls to the constant feedback, even calling us and having discussions about what to work on and what to develop inside our work. Me and Mrs. Costello worked really hard on making the interaction between the artwork and the audience deeper and better. The idea of the box came up one day when she was talking about the idea of going through photos and hard copy photos and what emotions people get from just even swiping on their phone or going through photos like that. It was a big part of building that connection in my artwork. I think we're the next generation to be in charge. I feel like we, especially our generation, know what is right and wrong. And again, there's a lot of things going on in the world today that we're learning from. And I feel like definitely our generation understands when to stand up and when not to. I still think it opened my mind up in being so grateful what I have, and also understanding that there are still problems going on in the Indigenous community. And that was the main idea of my work, to express and symbolise the importance of reconciliation and moving forward from these problems.
My family, they loved it. They loved the end result. The look on my mum's face when she seen her own portrait, she was a little bit picky though. She was, picking out the stuff that she didn't like about herself, but she's beautiful. My name is Narina Felino. I went to Curated High School out in Western Sydney, and the title of my drawings is Palestina or Ayinga, or in English, Crown of Treasures.
Hello, my name's Georgia Valetiadis. I am the head teacher of Kappa at Prairie Wood High School.
So definitely my ethnicity and my culture inspired me to create my work. Being one of the only Polynesian kids in stage 6 doing art, it's very rare to see any Polynesian works being done in general. So I really wanted to showcase my passion and my pride for my culture, and I really wanted to show everyone the beauty of it, and how through the different generations, hence during myself, my mum and my grandmother, how those values and traditions and all those beliefs that have been taught in my grandmother's age have been passed down to my mum, how she's been passed them down to me, and how I eventually will pass them down to my kids, and they can continue the cycle. My process started by taking photographs. So I started with photographing my mum, and then my sister photographed me, and I got in touch with my uncles back home in Samoa to photograph my grandmother. And then I started by tracing the photos onto my paper, and from there it was just straight hard work and commitment. Initially I wanted all of us to have almost no facial expressions, just to show that seriousness of our culture, but I just couldn't beat grandmother's smile. It just shows who we are as people and how we are as a family. We're all really closely connected, so it was beautiful. In year 11 we did a bunch of assignments where we had to focus on different materials, and I felt most comfortable doing pencil drawings or graphite pencil drawings. So when it came to the body of works, I decided that that's what I was most comfortable and strong with. In my process diary, I made sure to work on it before I touched the actual paper, just so that I could work on shadings for the skin, texture with the skin, and on the outfit and the clothing as well. We were stuck in lockdown for a long period of time, so it definitely was hard to stay motivated when it came around to doing all the little details and the clothing and all that. It also was hard not to have that face-to-face learning with my teacher, but she did keep us updated and made sure we gave regular updates just to see where we're going and to keep accountable of our work, so that was great.
Narina was a dream student for me. It was her resilience though. That was obvious. She wasn't afraid to take risks, but the skill set was there already. She was very confident. She knew where she was going from the outset. She knew exactly what she wanted to portray, and she started right off the bat. I think we worked very well together. I don't think we had any hiccups.
No, I loved working with her. She was really supportive. Again, during school, I was pretty busy with sport, prefect stuff, so I was all over the place. But she made sure that I was always on track. Even through the challenges, it helped me fall in love with the process even more, and the end result really did help me fall in love with my culture even more.
I think what this generation has had to navigate with some eventful times over the last few years. I mean, certainly the pandemic stands out as the biggest one, but they've also had to navigate, evidence of global warming, Black Lives Matter, we've had the Me Too movement, what's happening now in Ukraine. I think that's had an impact on this generation. I certainly think they care greatly about what happens, and having that platform, that voice, to be able to create change. It's a bit of a scary world at the moment, so it's important for them to have that voice.
Yeah. Definitely being born into Generation Z, I think that we have the power and the voice to create a platform just to voice and advocate issues that we are passionate about, or things that we believe in, things that we think is right. And I actually believe that if we don't speak, then who will? Our generation's more focused on technology, and we rely more on technology to speak and interact with other people. And I feel like through that we have the power to prevent more things from happening. We have the power to just voice our own opinions on the matters that are currently happening, and we get to change that. And we get to hopefully influence the next generation coming in to continue that.
I did have to do lots and lots of layers, so I think continually revisiting those photos and the stories behind them many times over the course of many months really allowed me to sort of engage with the subject matter a bit more and just further my personal investment in the work. My name is Charlie Gilmore, and I just graduated from St. Clair's College. My major work is called I Knew Nothing But Shadows and I Thought Them Real.
My name is Marie-Louise Smith, and I'm the Creative Arts Coordinator at St. Clair's College.
For me, this work was mostly about trying to sort of conceptualise an issue that the people dealing with it can't really, verbalise or speak about. And it's basically about my family's experience with degenerative, brain diseases and dementia specifically. So it's me trying to reconcile with these issues that affect my family really severely. And I think I came to that through discussion with Miss Smith after a lot of experimentation with other ideas and other mediums that really just didn't go anywhere, because I think they didn't have that personal involvement that I really needed to get invested in my body of work. So basically the images that I chose are from family photo albums taken by family members in the 60s and 70s. And I think I chose the motif of the pixel to represent it, to sort of contrast the subject matter, the mid-century Australian dream, with this motif that sort of symbolises 21st century modes of communication, to just sort of encapsulate that dichotomy and the conflict that arises out of it. So the work itself is quite large scale, and it's drawing. There's some large sort of A3 size ones, there's 5 of those, and then there's 8 small drawings that are supposed to resemble Polaroids to sort of call back to the idea of family photographs. The drawings consist of hundreds and hundreds of tonal pixels of varying tones. It took a very long time. I think my first big drawing that I did probably took me a whole term to just get the hang of drawing so many squares. But I think once I got one out of the way, the pace picked up a little bit. I probably went through about 7 or 8 boxes of 8B pencils. I think I got really sick of it because it is quite tedious, just squares over and over again. And pencil, it's quite a simple medium, it's not too exciting, but I think I did sort of come to understand just the potential of the medium. It doesn't have to just be realistic representation, you can sort of use graphite to do anything.
This was actually Charlie's second attempt at producing the body of work. We just had to pull the stops on the last work and really reevaluate where we were and which direction we were going to go in. And we just literally sat there and flipped through every contemporary drawing book that we had in the art department, and we just, I suppose, engaged with possibilities at that point to move forward. And that's really where your idea came from, because consequently your mother had just found some old albums that you were quite attracted to at that time, weren't you? And what about your first one that you chose? Was that who in the family was that?
So that was a picture of my grandmother with my uncle, and I think I started out from there because I just really love that photo, and I just think it sort of symbolises what I wanted the work to represent.
It was a very tender photo, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, you were looking to the past, but you were also in the future. You know, using the pixelation and the ideas and photoshops to realise the images that you were going to continue with in your work. You know, it's all part of what the Zoomers exhibition's about, really, isn't it? That notion of looking backwards to look forwards in a contemporary world, you know, and I think you synthesised that really well. Obviously, the weight of the students in their HSC year of having a second lockdown was significant in their learning. There was an understanding that students could come in to school at that time if they were completing a major project. So Charlie took advantage of that, and she spent a lot of time in the art room in her space upstairs. We're very fortunate that the students have a studio space where they can set up and continue working. And I think because you maximise that time in the art room, in the end, despite all of its restrictions, actually added to your development and practice.
I couldn't really take my work home because it was so large scale, and I did rely on a lot of the materials that we had at school. So I think it sort of just incentivized me to keep coming into the studio and just utilise my time as effectively as possible.
These students are really going to drive our future. They've got a lot to say, they're interested in a lot of world issues, and people like Charlie are incredibly involved and quite articulate about a lot of issues that they engage with in their world.
As a generation, the social conditions that we've encountered have been very different to generations before. Whether that's negative or positive, I think it just means that we have a different perspective, which when it comes to art is, really useful in understanding the world better, I think.
I think art also gave you a voice, though.
Definitely.
To articulate your passions.
I think so.
Yeah.
I chose the use of a pop vinyl, particularly because I collect them and a lot of my friends collect them, and through viewing everyone's collection, I always thought it's like a piece of art from a movie, from a TV show. So then I was like, what if I turned this into art and showcase this pop icon of art and try to replicate that into my own major work? I'm Emily Clark from Inner School, and my major work is titled Pop Art.
And I'm Emily Gardner. I'm the visual arts teacher at Inner School.
My major work was constructed to challenge humanity as a whole and how we are always into buying the artist and buying the artwork and not appreciating the soul and the story hidden within the canvas. I wanted to present this through taking the artist out of the canvas and showcasing them as being real and not just being this two-dimensional thing we go into galleries and see. I want the audience to feel the emotional connection that these are real people through history who have shaped what we're viewing today. I chose the artist because I wanted to showcase a snapshot of art history as a whole, from Van Gogh all the way to Banksy.
I thought that they were quite appropriate because they're the artists that we see a lot of consumerism around. Van Gogh is that figure in art that everybody goes to. Everybody knows Van Gogh. Everybody knows Frida Kahlo, everyone knows Banksy, Dali. They're the artists that students know and have become icons of the art world. There's also that playfulness that I saw that Emily was creating within her work, almost a bit inspired by Duchamp, really, that taking off of what is art? Why do we see these artists as these pinnacle of the art world? A bit of a mockery, a bit of a joke as well.
The use of making them a pop and shrinking down their size, even though they're so massive in the art world, was kind of comedic. But I've turned them into a piece of plastic and taken away all the millions of dollars they've gathered in art and kind of put them into a $20 price bracket. So yeah. I wanted to use a large variety of mixed media to showcase all my elements and skills that I've learnt through visual arts, particularly through Mrs. Teaching. Photography, painting, clay work and sculpturing, and editing through graphics on my iPad, particularly through the boxes, to show a large variety of everything I can do. I remember when I was like reading the news and it was like, you're gonna go in like lockdown, and like when you heard it I was like, oh, 2 weeks max, we'll be back. And then I remember I was talking to my parents and I was like, I think this is going to be a while, especially within like the second big lockdown. And I remember I came into class, the last lesson, with a massive list of everything, and I just like went like all crazy in that storeroom, just getting every material I could. Within Banksy, I wanted to photograph him in a natural element of graffiti within the city, particularly in Chinatown. But I couldn't, so I had to use whatever canvases I had left over, do my own graffiti, make a box, and make my own little studio to photograph him. And through that resilience of things not going right and having to adapt, became something that I'm using today, that it's like, this isn't working. Okay, how can I make something to counteract with this problem? And also with Dali, particularly within a lack of materials that I could find, I had to use stuff around my house. Like I wanted to make little paintbrushes, so I used, instead of wood, I used like toothpicks, and I used an old doll's head, like a Barbie, poor Barbie, but like cut her hair and like made like the paintbrushes from that, and just using whatever I had around the house kind of made me feel how art today is. It can be anything. We can do whatever we want. We can use whatever materials we want around us. Like I use random stuff, and I feel like those parts of repurposing materials has become the stuff that's made my major work stand apart from others, in that I've used unconventional stuff. Learning through Zoom was, I was going to say a challenge but a blessing, but it was actually just a challenge in general. There was no blessings about it. As Miss knows, I'm someone who will ask everyone, what's your view on this? Do you like this colour? If you don't like this colour, tell me, because I'll change it, because you're the audience. And not having that was like, I was kind of in the dark. I was like, do I just follow my ideas, or should I? So many Zooms, I had like my pops in the background, and I texted my friends, hey, what do you think about the pop so far?
A benefit was that they did learn that resilience, they learnt that resourcefulness. I feel like it made you stronger in that. So when you were saying that you normally would ask everyone else's opinion, you had to learn to trust yourself. And that was a really great skill that both you learnt and other students learnt as well along that time. So we had some fun times in our classes as well. It was about incorporating some fun moments in there, thanks to some of the boys that would put some interesting backgrounds that related to the works we were studying.
We literally transformed into the art world. I remember when we had the Louvre in the background sometimes.
The voice of Generation Z is so important because they interpret and see the world in a very visual way, through Instagram, through TikTok, through Snapchat, through online learning. They've engaged in a visual level that no other generation has. And I think that's means that they can see the world differently. They aren't just engaged in the gallery, in the textbook, in the way that we present the ideas to them. They're engaged in art already.
You like come up with an idea. First, everyone went to Instagram, Google, Pinterest, which was a massive inspiration for everyone, and just looking through pages and pages of ideas. And I think my generation we're a click of a button from everywhere in the whole world. Like, you could type up the Met website, type up your favourite artist, and have pictures of like Frida Kahlo's sketchbook. And like, we're just transported into a world that we could never see as past generations. Like, you could only go to a gallery to see art. Now I could buy it off Etsy, I could find it in Pinterest, or I could just like it on Instagram. And I think through the ability for everyone to create art and get their art viewed on a mass level, we were all able to challenge each other's ideas and showcase what our view in the world is.